everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, a Genie Vlogger, and welcome to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to Are We Filipinos by Blood? Shocking DNA test result, really didn't expect this, by making it happen vlog. Now this is not a channel I am familiar with at all. I did click through the channel a lot, and I guess it seems to be kind of a lifestyle travel channel based around the fact that the hosts are Filipino. I couldn't tell if it was one or two. It seemed like it might be a couple, although I did see a video about them breaking up, I guess. So I don't know if one took the channel or if it's still both their channel. Either way, it's going to be very interesting because with Filipino DNA test results, I have not seen that many. I think I saw one a few years ago when I was first doing these DNA test result reactions, and I don't really remember what the results were, but with Filipino, I think it'll be interesting to see, is there much Iberian influence in there? Because I know with the history of the Philippines, there's a lot of Iberian influence, but from what I hear, people say there really wasn't as much influence in terms of the genetic composition. Granted, a lot of people with Filipino ancestry have a Spanish, Iberian, Spanish or Portuguese sounding surname, but then at the same time expecting a lot of sort of that Southeast Asian, or maybe, is there going to be anything from, Oceanian or anything like that? I'm not quite sure. I think it'll be very interesting to see, and it'll be especially interesting depending on, let's see, when did they take this? They took this actually not too long ago, within the past year, and it seems to be MyHeritage based on their description. So it'll be interesting to see if they get any community readings of Philippines or specific areas of the Philippines. But I think with all that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
Today we're going to answer one simple question. Are we actually Filipinos by blood? Did a DNA test when we were in the US, and yeah, it's going to be a very exciting day for us because we don't know anything about the results. We don't know anything about the DNA matches. Mike and I did both the DNA test from MyHeritage, simply because we want to know where are our ancestors from. We are also looking for some questions in general in terms of heritage, family, and then just, simply reconnecting with loved ones that we might not have heard of, or who knows, maybe there's really some Filipino blood in us because you guys keep saying we are like Filipinos and we are foreigners, so foreigners that adopted to Filipino life here. And
okay, so they're not, I was gonna say they don't look Filipino, but I guess they're transplants living in the Philippines. So interesting. Hopefully we get a background on what they are going to expect, what they know about their ancestry. But I am hopeful maybe she'll talk about DNA matches, because she did kind of talk about, finding matches or relatives.
It's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be, either it's going to be entirely boring and yeah, knew that, or it's going to be boom.
They kind of sound South African. Are they South African? I mean, hopefully we'll find out. They really haven't talked anything about where they're from or their ancestry, but I mean, this is a video geared towards their main core audience who, probably already know all sorts of stuff about them.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, should we read the results?
Let's read the results. I just hope that I'm not a rat. You're a rat. I'm like, what?
Okay, we have both been holding back to view our results, although we got emails on a regular basis. I think every few days there was a DNA match and it said, you have a DNA match, check your results, and we're like, we just want to do this on camera.
I have a lot of Japanese cousins for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I keep getting the emails that there's new matches in Japan.
Really? Okay, let's have a look.
All right, shall we log in?
Yes. Okay, do you want to go first?
All right.
Okay.
My mom's been asking me every day, have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? Because she's also very interested. So.
Yeah, and she even sent you some news articles from your ancestors.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, DNA results are ready.
Wait a second. Here we go.
Here we go.
8,000 DNA matches.
All right.
Okay,
now show it to us.
Okay. All right. What?
The God.
What? my god.
That can't
Alright.
be, but that explains so much.
So I'm
How is this possible?
57.8% Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, which I expected, obviously, yeah. What I did not expect, and which is incredibly shocking to me, is that I'm 23.8% Balkan.
Interesting.
That is hilarious.
I mean, that'd be the equivalent of a grandparent being from the Balkans, and Balkan readings aren't necessarily the most expected results with the typical Northwestern European mixture. So with admixtures, these ethnicity percentage admixtures, that is, we are almost always seeing with people from Northwestern European populations a mixture of other population groups within that Northwestern European definition. So that's the British Isles, Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, the Low Countries, Scandinavia, so Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and then sometimes you might get a little bit of Central European sort of stuff. So, you know, France, Germany, Austria, maybe a little bit into the Eastern European area, sort of, kind of maybe into the Balkans, but you usually don't see a lot of those readings, and usually not at that high of a percentage. So at 23% or whatever he said, then we would probably be expecting about a grandparent, assuming it's all coming from one ancestor, and it's not like, you know, some of it's coming from his mom's side, some of it's coming from his dad's side, and other issues. So let's continue.
That is so hilarious. Is Czech Republic part of the Balkan? It's not, right?
No, that's
This is-
more
okay.
Central
And
Europe.
then there's
I mean, it's like right north of the Balkans.
two other ethnicities, which amounts to 18.4%. Let's see what they are. I'm 16% Scandinavian
Show it
and
to us.
2.4% East European. That is so interesting.
So yeah, those other readings aren't too surprising with a Northwestern European reading, and especially with that large Balkan reading, getting Eastern European, not surprising at all. So it sounds like, just assuming that all the DNA is coming from one specific ancestor, like I said, one grandparent being from the Balkans, and then the other three grandparents probably of just typical Northwestern European ancestry, maybe. Based on his reaction, I'm guessing British or Irish sort of ancestry.
I did not expect this at all.
And that makes sense if he is
so
South
funny.
African. I don't know if he is,
Never
but it
gonna
sounds
get the
like
end
it.
of this. So we have here DNA matches. Wow, I have 810 pages of relatives. That's crazy.
Show us something!
This may be a mix of the both of us? No.
No, this is just me.
That can't, yeah.
This is purely me. It says here shared DNA in percent. So a lot of British people I see here. USA.
USA.
Interesting.
I mean, not surprising if he is South African. I'm just going to go ahead and assume from now on this guy's South African. So if that is the case, I'm guessing he probably comes from some sort of a recent British migration to South Africa, sometimes in the past 200 years or so. And so it's very likely that whatever part of his family that was, you know, migrating, other relatives at that same time that his family came to South Africa were going to the US or Australia, New Zealand, Canada, elsewhere around the world. And I know this personally because my family in the 1800s went from London to the US, and from that same branch of the family, so my second great grandparents, their siblings, some of them went to South Africa, some of them went to Australia, some of them went to New Zealand, some of them went to, I don't know if actually any of them went to Canada, but there were relatives that went to Canada. But so it was really kind of common around that time of there were all these other areas of the English Empire that people could go to. So that kind of makes sense. I'd be really curious. Hopefully he shows his matches. I'd love to see, or at least hear, how much these matches are matching. Not just, you know, oh, it estimates this kind of a cousin, but like it says this many centimorgans.
Wow.
But I don't know if they will. Oh.
And then you can review the DNA match. That's interesting.
And you can contact the person.
And you can contact the person. That's so
That's
cool.
so cool.
Interesting. Okay. Let's
Yeah,
check
I
out-
think we can dive deeper
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the results a little bit later. I think the first
It's
impression
just yours.
is so surprising.
That's hilarious.
Okay. Do you know that you had 8,000 relatives?
No, I had no idea. And I had no idea that I'm 23% from the Balkans. I'm Eastern European.
Mike's family.
With the number of relatives, I mean, it's not super surprising. If he came from an endogamous population, he would have seen tens of thousands, if not more, of matches. So, I mean, everyone has thousands upon thousands of matches or relatives. If you just go out to like your fifth cousin distance, you know, your first cousins, you share grandparents. Second cousins, you share great-grandparents. Third, second great-grandparents. Fourth, third great-grandparents. And fifth, fourth great-grandparents. Well, for someone like me, most of my fourth great-grandparents were born late 1700s, early 1800s. Mostly the ones in the late 1700s from what I've seen. And so with that distance, think about how many people may be descended from someone born in the late 1700s. And in fact, in a lot of my families, that's some of the stuff I've done. I've tried to find all of the descendants. And you're usually looking at thousands. And that's just one of your fourth great-grandparent sets, assuming that they only had children as a couple and not with others. But then think about this fact of how many fourth great-grandparents you have. You have 64. I mean, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, 32 third great-grandparents, and then 64 fourth great-grandparents. So that's 32 separate couples, all with thousands of descendants, most likely. So just within a fifth cousin distance, you're probably looking at tens of thousands of relatives. But with this, you're just seeing the relatives that have actually DNA tested.
It is actually not that big, so 8,000 matches is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, should we check out yours?
Yeah. Okay, mine. Let's go. Oh yeah,
that looks.
Now, she does not sound South African. She sounds like she's European of some sort. Maybe even like Belgian or not really Dutch necessarily, but kind of that sort of area. Maybe German or Austrian or Czech or something. Actually, she did ask about Czech or Austrian, so maybe she's like Czech or something. But
that looks very correct.
I wish we knew.
Yeah, 67% Balkan.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense. So she's expecting Balkan. So 67% Balkan, 21.1% Eastern European, 11.9% Baltic, all making tons of sense, especially knowing the history of these areas. Now, with the Balkans and Baltics and Eastern European, it is sort of, you know, somewhat separated areas, but with such a related history of population flow between all of those areas, even just considering the recent Russian empires, you know, the USSR and the actual Russian Empire and just all the various versions of it, Lithuanian, Poland, Commonwealth and everything, this makes a lot of sense. And so I'm guessing that's probably where she's coming from, somewhere maybe in the Balkans or something, or Eastern European. But you can even see you have 3 ethnicities, so this is all of her results, and then 4 genetic groups. And I'm curious if she'll mention the 4 genetic groups, which are all listed under Balkan. So I'm guessing that is what her recent ancestry is.
Balkan,
So
21.1% East European, and 11.9% Baltic.
Interesting.
That is so interesting. I have 677 relatives in the US.
Now this makes sense too for her to get a good amount of results for matches if she's from the Balkans, because MyHeritage is one of the best databases to find matches who are from those areas in Europe and not just from English-speaking countries. So all of the other DNA testing companies, Ancestry, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Living DNA, those all test mostly people in what I like to call the English-speaking world. So you see a lot of Americans, Canadians, you know, British, Irish, Welsh, Scottish, South African, Australian, and New Zealand, and then a little bit into other areas that are kind of closely related to the English-speaking countries. But when it comes to MyHeritage, they have a really great database for Eastern Europeans, Balkans, the Baltics, and actually also a lot of South Americans. But I also do hear a lot of just kind of general Europeans and South Americans and even kind of North African and Western Asian. You get a lot more people doing DNA tests with MyHeritage because MyHeritage has made it as easy as possible for everyone around the world to get their DNA tests, where the other companies weren't really as focused on that. So MyHeritage really, they're doing that put them ahead of a lot of the others. So she should get pretty good matches. And I wish, or at least maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll get further in the DNA matches and talk about how close some of them are and what they actually share in DNA.
Sweden, France, Finland, Austria, obviously, Switzerland, UK, Hungary, wow, everywhere.
And where's the most?
The most is the US.
Wow, yeah.
So something that you might not know is that during the Balkan War, a lot of people actually immigrated to the US.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of cousins in the US and uncles, and I don't know, I've seen them maybe once.
And then here we have the breakdown. Yeah, 2.4% Eastern European, 16% Scandinavian, and 23.8% Balkan.
Oh wow, you have 400 matches in Italy. Explains your good Italian accent.
Wow, that is so cool. That is so interesting to know.
It is. I had no idea. I mean, I knew somehow about me because my family is kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
It's what?
we were not traveling that much.
We don't know what your ancestry is. For all of us who have never watched your channel before, we're completely in the dark what you were going to expect. Unless I missed it at some point. Maybe I did, because sometimes with these videos, I'm so focused on talking or trying to say something that, I'll pause it at the wrong time, and I don't know. So, but they haven't mentioned it yet.
To be Balkan. I gotta send that to my mom.
She's going to be shocked.
Yeah, she's gonna be shocked.
She's probably going to study the whole family tree.
I have Filipino blood. I am a Filipino.
Well, we still have to figure out who it is and how it evolves and like where it comes
Based on what?
from. But
Yeah.
it is proven that
I have 17 Filipino relatives.
yeah,
That doesn't mean you have Filipino ancestry. That just means they do. And look at how much DNA he's sharing with them. This top one, 0.4%, 28.5 centimorgans, and one segment that's super, super small. That is a very distant match. I mean, you're looking at a match that, they say third to fifth cousin, but this match very well could be even more distant than that. You could be looking at a sixth, seventh cousin. I mean, the way DNA recombines, it's random. But yeah, the way that they're interpreting this, not right at all. And even more so, I bet you if you looked at these matches' ancestries, they only have a little bit of Filipino, Indonesian, and Malay. And even more, think about the fact that it's basically just, it's a big area. It's not just Filipino. It's that kind of whole island area or whatever. Not the Spice. I guess Spice Islands are just Indonesia, aren't they? I don't know if that kind of encompasses more than just Indonesia, but yeah, I mean, just that, all of that. So yeah, kind of, they're jumping to conclusions here that aren't really that good.
yeah, I think
It's
it
like
was
crazy.
17. Yeah, I had a few too. I mean, it says Filipino, Malay, or Indonesian.
Okay.
But we can dig deeper and figure out what's behind all of this.
What's likely behind all of this is that he's related to these people through one of his family lines, and they just happen to also have a reading of Filipino, Malay, and Indonesian. And even more, when we need to look and see how much are they actually getting of that, because you could just have these 20 or so odd matches that have that. Out of the thousands of matches you have, 20 some odd have it. But when you look at those 20 some odd, how much do they actually have? Because if they only have 1% or 0.5% or, really small stuff, it may just for them be misreads. So yeah, I understand the excitement if they're, living in Philippines and, it's like, oh, we have a connection to where we live in a sense, but not really the way to look at these tests.
Figuring out that Mike comes from Balkans is kind of crazy. It's insane to me. I have no words. Like, I don't even know how the connection has been done. So it will be really interesting to research it a little bit further, especially for my family. When I was in Austria during Christmas time,
She's Austrian. So that makes a lot of sense, because when you're looking at Austria, I mean, that's right kind of in the middle. If you look at, the Baltics, the Balkans, and Eastern Europe, it's like right there in the middle. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So Austrian, although I guess Maybe her family went to Austria from somewhere in the Balkans, and then I don't know. I need to stop trying to assume what it is. I just wish she kind of told us, so maybe she is now.
Kind of tried to connect with everybody and just see my aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody. So yeah, it's really difficult to have everybody in one place, and especially because after war everybody kind of just escaped in all different directions. So my family is currently spread out all over the world, and I have a huge amount of family in the US. I know that there are a lot
from where?
in England and Sweden, but yeah, it's just going to be very interesting to reconnect. And I was even talking to my uncle, and he said it would be really nice to have a family tree where we can trace our heritage and just stay connected with our family, and it would be nice to hang it up somewhere to have it as a memory and give it to the next generation.
All right, well, that was a decent video. Not too bad. I kind of wish they would have showed more stuff on screen when they were looking at the results. They did at least show the home screen version. They didn't show the actual full results page. So like we didn't see any of the communities. They didn't talk about any communities, even though we saw that there were communities that they were given. In terms of his results, with that Balkan reading, like I mentioned, we would be expecting probably a grandparent. So that's something where, you know, if he is building his family tree and he talks to his parents, they may be able to figure out like, oh yeah, well, my dad or my mom was, you know, this and that makes a lot of sense. But it is also possible that it's coming from both sides of his family, or maybe multiple sides through one line. So maybe it's not specifically one grandparent, but maybe it's, you know, both grandparents through his dad or something like that. But if they are researching the family tree, hopefully that's something that they would be able to figure out by just tracing up to second great grandparents or third great grandparents or fourth great grandparents. If you can identify at least all of your second great grandparents, I'd imagine you'd probably find some sort of a Balkan connection, or maybe an explanation why you're getting such a high Balkan reading, where, like I said, most Northwestern European readings, while you may get a little bit of Balkan, something that high I think isn't quite as usual. For her results, we don't really know where she's from. I mean, we know the family's living in Austria, possibly after escaping from the Balkan War. Don't know where in the Balkans they're coming from. So, you know, could be Bosnia, could be Croatia, could be Albania, could be Romania. Who knows? All sorts of areas. But I'm guessing if they went to Austria and based on the results of getting a good amount of Baltic too and the Eastern Europe, maybe they were in more of a northern area of the Balkans. That's where they were from. I don't know, but that will change things a bit. But from what she was saying in terms of wanting to expand her family tree and build it out, I know that the, you know, record availability throughout the Balkans is very hit or miss. It depends on what's available. Some places things were destroyed. That's kind of a little overplayed sometimes when a lot of people talk about the Balkans and Eastern Europe in general. But there probably is some stuff out there. But even more, having done this DNA test, this may be one of the most useful tools in their arsenal to actually build out their family tree and possibly get beyond the lack of a paper trail. Even if the records exist, just accessing them may be really difficult. So this may be something that may help them expand that greatly. And to do that, they need to use their genetic matches. And speaking of genetic matches, it was great to hear them talk about the genetic matches a bit. They did show the match list there at the end for that whole, you know, well, he's Filipino kind of, but it was kind of good to just see like, hey, we are getting matches, and they were talking about where their matches are from. And I especially think that that was kind of useful in showing that, you know, MyHeritage really is one of the best databases if you have recent European ancestry or South American ancestry as well. But with recent European ancestry, and especially Eastern Europe, Balkan, Baltic, I find a lot of people get a lot of use out of that for MyHeritage. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more reactions just like this, be sure to check out this one right here. Thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members.